What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is your boy Frankie Bones, and in today's video, I'm going to hop over into Yankee Universe. We're going to break down the weekend series against the Astros, talk about the split, a little disappointing, but we'll go through, we'll break down all the games, we'll talk key takeaways that I took away from this series, what's up Doc, and close out with who's on deck. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, as well as don't forget to subscribe if you are new to not miss out on any Yankees content coming for the rest of the season. So, as you always should, we'll start with game number 1. The Yankees end up taking this one by a score of 4-3. Clark Schmidt on the bump to start out. He pitches pretty well. He goes 5 solid, 2 runs, 4 hits, 4 Ks, so pretty average outing for him, continuing to put the Yankees in good spots to try and win some ball games. Big G and McKinney both go deep in the first to give the Yankees a little bit of a cushion there right off the bat. Towards the end of the game, Anthony Volpe ends up getting a clutch RBI to end up taking the lead 4-3. And then the big dogs in the bullpen end up coming in to close out the game. Moving on to game number 2. The Astros end up taking this one by a score of 7-3. Luis Severino back on the bump again, and you really wish that he wasn't. Another not great start for him. He only goes 4, allowing 5 runs, walks 3, and gives up 2 home runs as well. And unfortunately to follow him, more bad news to come. Albert Abreu does not end up pitching well in this one either, coming out of the bullpen, trying to get some bulk here from him. He goes 1 2/3. Allowing 2 runs, 2 walks, and just sort of a lot of damage. I mean, those were all the runs that were given up there. The Yankees only end up hitting 3 solo shots, so that's how we end up getting our 3. Giancarlo, Bowers, and IKF each have 1. And sort of highlight this game, the Yankees were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position, and they left 7 runners on base. So everybody that was left was in a position to score. Yankees weren't able to capitalize, and they end up dropping this one. Moving on to game number 3. Back in the positive swing, the Yankees end up taking this one by a score of 3-1. Nestor comes in. He makes his debut coming off the 60-day, and he looked really sharp. Only went 4 because he was at a pitch count of about 60, ended up throwing 64. 1 hit, 1 run, came on a solo shot. Sort of a cutter or a sweeper, I kind of forget, just left middle to Altuve, but ends up punching out 8 and looked really fantastic in this one. The scoring gets started by Anthony Volpe with a sacrifice fly, 2 solo shots to follow from Bowers and Glaber, and the bullpen was really, really solid in this one. We ended up using, again, a lot of our big dogs. The bullpen goes 5, 1 hit, no runs. We had Hamilton to Tommy Kahnle to Michael King to Clay, and they sort of shut down the Astros and able to solidify this win. And finally, moving on to game number 4. Lots to talk about here in this one. The Astros end up winning this one by a score of 9-7. Carlos Rodon on the bump for this one. He did not look good at all, was getting tattooed pretty good. He only goes 2 2/3 on 3 hits, 5 runs. Walked 2, he did strike out 5, but he got tagged up there, and ultimately, towards the end of his start, he had some tightness in his hamstring, so he was removed in the 3rd inning, leaving the Yankees a little bit shorthanded again. And, this whole series, we only got 4, 8, 13, 17 2/3 from our 4 starting pitchers, so definitely not ideal. Wandy Peralta has an uncharacteristically bad game, trying to stretch him, which I think was definitely a mistake, but sort of the hand that we were dealt in that spot. He goes 1 2/3, 3 hits, allowing 4 runs, giving up some homers. And offensively from the Yankees, Gleyber Torres looked really good. He went 3 for 4, scored 3 times, 2 RBIs, 2 walks, so really productive day again for him. But at the end of the day, the Yankees couldn't limit the damage. All 9 of Houston's runs were on home runs, and with the score being so close, the Yankees 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position, left 15 guys on base, lots of bases loaded second and third situations where the Astros were able to work out and the Yankees weren't able to put up a monstrous number. They were able to do so to bring the game and tie it back up 5-5, but definitely some more opportunities for them to come across the line with a win in this game despite being a little short-handed. So overall, where this leaves the Yankees, record of 58-54, only 4 games over 500. They're now 12 games back of Baltimore, who continues to surge, and the Yankees are 4.5 games back of the wild card. A lot of teams in front of them have continued to win at a pretty impressive clip. The Blue Jays have been playing well. Obviously, we played Houston. We kept our distance there from them, so just going to have to keep plugging away, but definitely not the best spot to find yourself. Transitioning over to key takeaways. First one I want to talk about is that it's massive to have Nestor Cortes back. Reports are that he feels strong. You could see that with the life on his fastball, and just his comfortability on the mound, I think, was really promising for a lot of Yankees fans. To go over and just reiterate his start, only 64 pitches here, like I had mentioned, but he ended up going 4 strong, 1 run on 1 solo shot from Altuve, 1 walk, 8 Ks. His stuff looked really good, and he was really commanding that fastball for a lot of these strikeouts up in the zone as well. So really promising, looking forward to seeing the steps that he's going to be able to make over his next few starts. The next key takeaway to talk about is the captain, Aaron Judge. He ends up playing 3 out of these 4 games, and ultimately that just shows that the toe is continuing to respond well to the treatment and the rest that he has been putting in, obviously, over the past number of weeks. But all 3 of these games, he did play DH, and offensively, just a little bit of a shell of himself. On the series, he went 0 for 12 with 6 strikeouts, so not sure if it was really a great game plan or sort of what it was. Some of the at-bats are pretty good. He hit the ball hard when he did, but 6 Ks, a little uncharacteristic, but obviously just excited to see him in there and be, one of the guys once again, which I think is a very, very undervaluable part of having him back in the lineup. The next key takeaway to talk about is one of our trade deadline moves, actually. Keenan Middleton. He actually really impressed this weekend. He had 2 different opportunities to showcase his stuff. He ends up going 3 innings, does not allow a hit, does not issue a walk, ends up striking out 5 of the 9 guys he faced, and 24 out of 32 strikes, ended up pitching really well. His stuff looked good. He had 2 shutout innings today, so impressive stuff from him, and curious to see what his opportunities will continue to look like. Obviously, Loaizaga coming back, but some pretty good stuff for his first 2 outings in the pinstripes in the Bronx against, a really tough, aggressive Astros team. So, good on Keenan. And lastly, it was a good result, I will say, splitting with the Astros. I'll definitely take a split, but the reality is the teams in front of us are playing really well, and 3 out of 4 would have really been massive from a momentum perspective for us in terms of where the clubhouse might be, in terms of the feel around the clubhouse. I think it's still really positive as well, but at the end of the day, 3 out of 4 would have been massive, and definitely a winnable game today, getting to Urquidy and having an opportunity to get to their bullpen as well. Moving on to What's Up, Doc. 2 pretty interesting ones here, the first being Anthony Rizzo. Obviously a lot of stuff going on with him over this past week, but Rizzo was put on the 10-day for what they're calling post-concussion symptoms, and ultimately what it boils down to, he had cited over the past few days prior to being put on the 10-day that he was feeling foggy and having tired feelings, some things that are pretty common with having concussions, and ultimately another thing that he cited was just sort of seeing the ball in different locations than it actually was, whether that's sort of his brain registering is sort of pretty interesting to talk about. I've had a fair amount of concussions, but clearly not a doctor, so we won't go too far into it. He will be on sort of a week-to-week approach. Again, physically, he said that he feels really well, but ended up going to a neurologist. This was the diagnosis that they came up with. We're talking about his reaction time being a lot slower than the average person, and I think just about everybody in the MLB is quite above average in reaction time as a result of hitting a baseball being the hardest thing to do. Definitely in sports, quite possibly in human history. But hopefully Rizzo continues to follow the advice that the doctors are giving him. I believe he said he was taking some supplements to help him. And, we'll see what ends up happening. But would love to try and get him back sooner rather than later and try and get him back into form, because clearly something was wrong, and it's crazy that it took them 2 months for Rizzo to go to a neurologist or any sort of doctor to try and come up with the answers for some of the problems that he had been running into. And the second guy we're going to talk about, sort of a short list here for What's Up Doc, but Jonathan Loaisiga, his plan is to return tomorrow, recording this here Sunday night, but his plan is to return Monday in Chicago for the series against the White Sox, and this would be really great for the team. Continue to lengthen the back end of that bullpen, give them a little less pressure in terms of needing to use these big dogs every night to try and shut down games. Going to be really important for them to have a stable of guys to be able to go to in games that are maybe not as close, or ultimately just provide more length and more versatility in their bullpen. So his stuff looks good, and excited to see him in his debut back on the team. And lastly, we'll talk who's on deck, talk about the upcoming series here for the New York Yankees. As I just mentioned, after the afternoon game today, the Yankees are going to travel out to Chicago to take on the White Sox for 3. It'll be interesting to see, how this team is going to respond to, a tough series against the Astros, but this really needs to be a sweep if they're looking to try and make any sort of push for this third wild card spot. And, especially the way that they've dealt their pitching and some of their other players, it's definitely very feasible for this Yankees team to do it, and would love for them to make a statement here in Game 1 on Monday. After Chicago, the Yankees will travel to Miami, where they will play a 3-game set against the Marlins. Day off in between after Chicago, but Miami's a good young team. They have some pretty good pitching, and at times their offense can sort of really work for them. So definitely going to need a series win here in Miami as well. Definitely cooled off from their hot period in the first half, but definitely not somebody to be overlooked. And ultimately, after Miami, we will travel to Atlanta. Best team in baseball. Going to be a really difficult split. And the reality is we're going to need at least one. And we're going to need to try and win every series that we have coming down the stretch, especially the way that the teams in front of us have been playing. But definitely a fair amount of gettable games here in the next 3 series. Taking one from Atlanta would be great. But at the end of the day, you have an opportunity to sweep 2 teams that I think the Yankees definitely have enough talent to do. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to show up offensively or not. And Atlanta's going to be what it's going to be. But overall, you guys can let me know down in the comment section below what your guys' key takeaways were from this Astros series, what sort of the vibe of the locker room is as we move out to Chicago, and, maybe just some answers. I mean, the Yankees are clearly not in the best shape right now. Offense definitely looked a lot better in this Astros series, but it's going to need to be a lot more consistent, and just want to hear from you guys who you think is going to end up stepping up. But for now, that's going to do it for me, guys. This has been your boy Frankie Bones, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Peace out.